Hello, this is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com, and today we're going to speak about 193 riser options from Scalarworks. Now, you have definitely seen Scalarworks products around. The question is just where. They are very popular and very premium for what they offer. Now, after using the Reptilia Core 193 riser for one of my optics, I was very curious to see what other options are available on the market and what do they offer in comparison to other brands. So I reached out to Scalarworks. I said I'm really curious to check out the 193 riser specifically for an LPVO, as well as also a 193 riser for their standard optics. Now, they're definitely on the higher end in cost with regards to optics mounting. However, you very much get what you pay for. So if you're looking for a premium, top of the line option for being able to use optics and mount them to your rifles, this is definitely one of the first places I'll have you look. Now, there are reasons why they're obviously going to be more expensive, and there are specifically for the LPVO mounting, two things I wanted to point out that really make this optic mounting system stand out in comparison to other offerings on the market. The first thing, which I think is absolutely game-changing, and it should be included into every mount that's now available, is their quick leveling option. For me, one of the biggest things that always drove me away from using an LPVO was going to be the leveling, because I didn't want to send it specifically to a gunsmith who's going to charge me a huge exorbitant amount of money just to be able to make sure that it's level. I also wanted to really make sure that it was level, because the further and further out you go to stretch an LPVO, the more of a difference that cant could make if your optic is not perfectly level. So they attach to the bottom of the mounting option. Most LPVOs are going to have a flat base at the bottom of their optic. So you pretty much line it up with this red screw that they have at the bottom. You twist it until it's flush with the optic, and that's literally it. It levels it perfectly, and that's all that it takes. So for that extra amount of money, if you're someone who's going to be swapping or trying out different optics, LPVOs, and you're going to constantly having to resend it to a gunsmith, this will actually save you money because you don't need to do that. It's also one of the first mounts that I'd be comfortable with taking to the range with a brand new LPVO that I've never used before and have everything set up at the range. Because again, since the leveling for me has always been a big variable, having that completely taken out is incredible. That's an incredible thing to be having to take out of the equation and just be able to focus on the optic itself. The other thing about it is its quick detach abilities. So for a lot of people, having an LPVO on their rifle means that you're not going to be able to use your backup sights. And even if your optic goes down, unless you unscrew the what's called the mount from the rifle, you're still not going to be able to use your backup sights. So that's why you might see people who have canted red dot options or canted what's called iron sights of some form, just to be able to use their backups if need be. The benefit to this mount is that there are finger tightening screws that you pretty much unscrew yourself and just screw back on if you need to, and that's literally it also. So in comparison to what other offerings are on the market, you really get a very lightweight system that has a quick detach option, which means if something goes wrong with your optic itself, you just unscrew it, you can flip up your rear sights, and you could go back to work without needing to be worried about that setup. So it also keeps everything very low profile. The big thing also is the fact that this is a 193 riser, which means another issue for me with LPVOs is having to get very low and really having to make sure you have none of that scope shadow to be able to get an effective shot on target. With the 193, it really comes up to your eye very quickly, and the first reaction I get out of most people when I ask them to check it out is wow. It's just very, very quick, it's very comfortable, and for someone who's not very used to LPVOs, me specifically, I like being able to have that optic come right up to your eye without needing you to squish down and really kind of fiddle around to try to find the sweet spot for the optic. So a 193 for an LPVO for me is now the only way to go. I would never want to go with an absolute co-witness. Again, the other benefit to that is that for this upper specifically, I have the A2 front sight, which means it's still going above that. So I don't need to even be worried about seeing anything in my reticle because it's going to be above it and I don't need to worry about it. At the same time, if I need it for whatever reason, I unscrew it, drop the optic, and I could use my backup sights without any issue. So these are things that really stood out to me when I got this in my hands. In regards to also the weight being very, very comfortable. It's very lightweight. It's very easy to install. Again, having that quick setup without needing to worry about leveling is a big, big, big deal. And if you've ever owned an LPVO or any scope for that matter, that's one of the first things you'll notice is a problem. So here's another rifle setup I have for one of my AR-15s, and it's using the 193 risers. This is a Leap mount from Scalarworks as well. there, a lot of the same things apply to this setup. Now, if you have this optic, you're going to still have the quick detach system of just being able to unscrew and screw it back on, which has worked so far very well for me. And based on reviews and other people's opinions I've seen for people who use this setup, it's worked very well. I didn't need to use Loctite. I don't know if that's something that's specifically recommended, but I was just able to finger tighten it with my hand, and it stayed in place very well, and it works really, really nicely. So now I want to kind of touch on something that I'm sure is going to be a question that people are going to ask, which is, in the past, I made a video of the Reptilia Core 193 riser and what's the difference or comparison between that one and this one. Before being able to do that, there's a very important terminology we need to clear up. There's a big, big difference between the word affordable and cheap. If you're someone who's just getting into the 193 world and you're curious to get a feel for what that's like, you probably are going to want to go with the Reptilia Core simply because the cost of Reptilia Core is significantly cheaper, and it's in concept the same thing with regards to height. So if that's something you want to get yourself into, that's something you want to check out, it's going to be much more affordable to be able to get into that. And for me myself, that's what I started with, being able to start with a 193 from Reptilia Core, because you can't really beat the price. Now, the key word there is affordable. It is not cheap. It is a very durable, very well-made product that's going to be more affordable than this option. But again, affordable being the key word of, it doesn't mean that it's a cheap quality item. It's a very high quality item, just with a lower price tag. So then what would be the difference between that and this? The biggest difference for me, besides for the skeletonization, which I think is just nice to be able to reduce a little bit of weight, is going to be able to have the quick detach system. So being able to have a quick detach system and being able to throw it off and use your backup sights if you have them. Obviously, this is more of a testing platform right now, so I don't have that set up. Is very valuable because on the Reptilia Core, if something goes down with that optic, you're not able to have an absolute or lower 1/3 co-witness with your backup sights because it's still too high and you're not going to be able to see. You're going to only see the bottom of the optic. So having an option for a 193 is either going to be, your two options are either to have backup sights that you're able to line up with the ability to remove the optic so it won't be in the way, or to have like 45-degree offset sights that you're still able to use your offset sights. Again, I think it's very important to have some form of backup when you're using any optic. So if you're going to use the Reptilia Core, unless you're carrying around some kind of tool to be able to remove it, you're not going to be able to use it, any backup sights unless you have them as an offset. With the Scalarworks, you can leave your setup the regular way that it is and just be able to have the option to remove and throw it off and then be able to use your backups. So that's going to be a very big difference with the Reptilia versus the Scalarworks 193 riser. Again, for this setup, it's very lightweight, it's very high end, and it's very, very well machined, which I think is very nice. A big compliment to Scalarworks that I want to give is that they come with backup screws, which means once you remove the screws from your standard Holosun optic or aim point or whatever you want to end up using the mount for, very often you could end up accidentally stripping the screws or just having an annoyance of being worried about what happens if the screws get damaged and having to reorder them. They come with screws that are as a backup, which is what I end up using for this, which is just kind of like a peace of mind knowing that no matter what happens to the cheap ones I've had on the previous optic, they're going to have a backup, which again, I think is great. They also send you a tool to make sure that you're using the specific screw and torque that you're going to need for your optic, which again, those are like the little things that really are nice to have when you're getting a higher end optic. The packaging also, as a side note, it doesn't matter at all, but their packaging is very nice when it comes to Scalarworks setups. So it just, when you're buying something premium, it's nice to know that you're getting a premium setup and a premium offering for the things that you're getting. So that's another thing I just wanted to be able to point out. So as a summary, is it worth it to get a 193 riser from Scalarworks for the LPVO or for the red dot? When it comes to the LPVO, absolutely. Again, a huge variable here, which people don't take into consideration, which was a huge annoyance for me, was leveling. The fact that they have that leveling button at the bottom to be able to screw in and have it just properly leveled from the first go around is incredible. Also, again, being able to have a quick detach system, but you just unscrew with your fingers and throw off, is very valuable to me because I don't need to change the setup of my rifle right now. I can just leave my A2 front sight, I can leave my backup sight and just throw it off if I need be without changing anything. So for the LPVO, absolutely, it's a very worthwhile investment for what you're getting. Now again, it is on the higher end of cost of things, but if you're someone who uses rifles seriously, if you're in law enforcement, if you're in the military, if you're a security officer who might need a rifle and you need it to work very well the first time, I think it's very much worthwhile to be able to look into. Again, you get what you pay for, and I think that's really something to be able to consider. In regards to the 193 for the red dot, there's definitely different options that are available in the market. I think, again, it's a great option to be able to have that quick detach, to be able to throw it off if need be. If you're really wanting to get into it, but not sure if it's something that you really are going to want, you can always start off with getting a Reptilia Core 193 riser and just seeing how it feels out. But then again, you're going to realize the disadvantages of not being able to remove it or needing to have to use offset sights. It's not really a downfall because a lot of people are using offset sights. With regards to this setup, I might use an offset red dot potentially for my optic, just because it's going to be faster than using iron sights. So really, depending on what your preferences are, there's going to be pros and cons, obviously, to what you want to be able to get yourself into. So again, as an overview, I think the LPVO option is very valuable if it's something that you're going to be using a lot of different optics through, or you just really want a duty setup that you know is reliable. The 193 optic for the LPVOs are invaluable completely. They're incredible. So it's definitely something I'd recommend you check out if you're looking for a high-end premium use duty use optic mount. And it's also something that I think might very much change your perspective completely on LPVOs in general. I'm still getting used to this LPVO. It was sent to me by opticsforce.com. And so far it's been incredible for the price and for the setup. And it might be something I'd actually consider to end up being my primary use setup, just because the riser is really what makes it worthwhile. So if that's something you're interested in looking into, check out Scalarworks.com. Again, a lot of really great options for what they have there. This is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.